On behalf of the BCIC and NSE, we express our sincere thanks to Mr. Maheshwar Rao for joining this session, Ms. Rachana Bhusari, Abheek Datta, Ms. Hiral Valia, and Wilfred Simon for accepting our invitation to address on this important subject. We also like to thank all the participants for joining today's session. We request all of you to kindly mute your mic and webcam options. This will enhance and keep the bandwidth strong, as well as avoid any disturbance in the background. Please post your questions in the chat box only. Also be viewing the chat box for any specific instruction given by the organizer from time to time. The speakers will respond to the questions during the session, and in case time do not permit, we shall be sharing the queries to the panelists and shall revert back to you accordingly. Kindly note the organizers will be disconnecting those participants who switch on their mic or webcam despite of our frequent request. May I now invite Dr. V Omprakash to set the context of today's subject and also moderate the session. Thank you all once again for joining this evening session. Over to you, Dr. Omprakash.
Good afternoon, all. Welcome to this wonderful session being organized by BCIC and Prithvi. There seems to be a
There's an echo, Dr. Omprakash. There's an echo, so I think others will need to keep their mics on mute while you speak.
Can I mention that an echo takes place if two particular links are opened in the same room? My request is, if anybody has opened two connections in the same IP or the same gateway, you will end up having an echo, or in the same room.
looks like.
Please go ahead, Omprakash.
I think now it is clearer.
Yeah, it's clear.
This I think there's a sound.
Go ahead, Omprakash.
Yeah, I think now it's much better. Okay, let's start it. Yeah. Welcome once again to all of you to this wonderful session. This COVID-19 has disrupted the whole business and also the living lifestyle. Everything it has been to a task. However, we are looking at some opportunities even in the lockdown stage and in the amidst of COVID-19. So now we are trying to talk about the listing of MSME and also the trades. These are the opportunities available to us now, and we would like Mr. M. Maheshwar Rao, IAS, is currently serving as the Principal Secretary of Commerce and Industries Department, Government of Karnataka. Prior to this, Mr. Maheshwar Rao served as Deputy Commissioner of South Canara, Mandya, Commissioner of Industries and Commerce, Managing Director of KPCL, Secretary, Agriculture Department, Commissioner BBMP. So I welcome Mr. Maheshwar Rao to give the government perspective of the listing of MSME and trades. On to Mr. Maheshwar Rao.
Yeah, now you can hear me. Thank you. I think Prithvi was sending me a phone call on this point. Thank you very much. This is an good opportunity for me to talk to all of you and get a lot of feedback. As you are aware, the issue with trades and issue with listing in the stock exchanges has been going on for some time. I hope that these two platforms really catch on quickly, because liquidity is a major issue, and infusion of funds, if it is possible, either through the stock exchange or for getting more capital for expansion plans, and also trades if platform, because you can then get your receivables quickly, and that is no longer a big burden, because there's a huge problem of liquidity now for companies, can be addressed by all of us, or by these two new products. And with BCIC support, we had actually tried to organize a seminar earlier, and also I think this is an ongoing exercise which requires a huge amount of buy-in. I think at the same time it also requires little more buy-in from a lot of the larger companies. As you are aware, listing of stock markets is an option to raise capitals for MSMEs. The advantages are accessing capital and financing opportunities, like I mentioned, because it allows them for expansion and reduces the burden of debt. It also allows a proper valuation of the companies, because it gives you a very clear picture of these companies on their financial health, including for the owners for many a time. Visibility, because when you have a public issue, you are in a position to get major media coverage, better public awareness. Across the world, people will also have a look at and identify companies which are listed. And also, if you're listed, typically the governance related issues are much better off, because there are a lot of statutory requirements. Some of the other problems which are being faced by companies which go in for listing, and I think today this is a good opportunity, would be when NSE talks about it, is increased regulatory costs for companies, because you will have to employ that many more people. MSMEs typically are 3 or 4 management people companies, and the rest are all basically entrepreneurs. They have to go into a process of getting this adhering to regulatory requirement. As it is, you are burdened by so many regulatory filings, statutory matters. There is, of course, issues of price manipulation of shares, which could be affected today, and also there is a problem of capacity, whether promoters and management, how well equipped. I think somebody's put out here. I think you have to mute the others, please. Hiral Valia, you are on. Your mic will be muted, please. Okay. Yep. They also have a lack of capacities, and will expose them also to a new regulatory environment. Looking at this, I think I think NSE is looking into an issue where you can bring more MSMEs to it. I believe close to around 2,500 crores have been invested in MSMEs in around 145 small industries. As far as in 2018, the remaining figures will be given by NSE. I think we look forward to their talk on this point. As regard trades, like I mentioned, Threads is a great platform for people to use. We would like to onboard, and we are in talks with a lot of the government PSUs to see whether they can be onboarded quickly into the Threads platform, because this is one methodology, I believe, by which your stocks which are lying and carrying debt inventory costs in your godowns are available to be in some form. You can capitalize it and get your receivables quickly, fairly quickly. In the last SLBC meeting also, we talked about how we could popularize trades and bring it more to the knowledge of the investors and the small entrepreneurs. I look forward to some of your feedback also. If not me, my office team will be there to see how you can take advantage of trades, and we would like to listen to you a lot more on your points in this. These are my initial words. I leave it to the rest of the team for taking forward the discussion. Thank you very much for allowing me to make these preliminary remarks, and I will join you, of course, towards the end. Over to you, Prithvi.
Thank you, Mr. Maheshwar Rao. That was indeed a very brisk talk, and we would look forward to definitely get back to you with all the members' request on trends and the SME listing. This is the need of the hour, as you said. Now we move on to Mrs. Rachana Bhusari, the Vice President of National Stock Exchange of India Limited, which is currently ranked the world's second largest exchange in cash market trades. She is responsible for all India business development initiatives of NSE for listing of small and medium enterprises, SMEs on the browse. She is postgraduate in financial management and commerce and law graduate with nearly 20 years of experience working with NSE. In her earlier roles at NSE, she has handled functions like listing, investigation, member supervision, and clearing corporations. She is also the vice president, chairman of the World Federation of Exchanges SME Working Group. Welcome you, madam, and on to you.
Yeah. Good afternoon to each one of you present for this wonderful session, and thank you, Mr. Maheshwar Rao, for giving a brief synopsis of NSE Emerge and setting the tone right. Mr. Omprakash, I just need a confirmation from you that I'm audible as well as I'm visible in the right manner, sir.
Yeah, sure. You are audible and visible.
Okay, thank you so much, because I had some initial connection issues. I hope they sorted out. And since my sharing the screen is not enabled, I will just run through what this Emerge platform is about, and I will just explain to you why this is important at this point of time for entrepreneurs to think about an alternate funding mechanism. Yeah. So, NSE SME Emerge. Mr. Maheshwar Rao has rightly started it and said that, a lot of companies have got listed on this platform and fundraising has happened on this platform. And he also mentioned that, this is a lot of initiatives from the Karnataka government in this matter has been going on. So taking that taking the dialogue further, I would want to continue with this, saying that, we have currently more than 200 companies that have got listed on this platform, and more than 3,200 crores of funds have been raised out of this platform. So why NSE Emerge? Why was NSE Emerge formed, and what is the need, and what does NSE Emerge do for small and medium enterprises is what I will be talking to you in the next 10 minutes. Yeah. So why NSE SME Emerge? If you look at, there was already a platform for the larger corporates, where the larger corporates would list themselves and raise funds through the capital markets. However, there was no platform where the smaller corporates could come and raise funds from the public markets and list themselves on the stock exchange. So a lot of deliberation was held on this, and hence it was recommended that across India, there should be a stock exchange, or there should be a platform which facilitates small and medium enterprises to use an alternate funding mechanism. As we are all aware, traditionally, SMEs or the promoters or the entrepreneurs fund their business initially through their own money and the own funds that they have. Subsequently, for the growth needs, they also approach to the bank. So traditionally, banking methods and own funds have been the only funding mechanisms that have been available. But having said that, that was not sufficient for people or entrepreneurs who had a growth path set for themselves. So if they needed more fund, what was the option available to them? Was it that if you have exhausted your collaterals, then it will not be possible for you to raise funds? No, that was not it was. It was that you can raise funds from the public markets also. When this platform was introduced, a lot of thought process was put in place so that it is quite simply for entrepreneurs to join this platform, and the framework is also not very difficult for the investors and the intermediaries who trade on this platform. So from the investors' perspective and the intermediary perspective, the platform was kept more or less on the same lines as it was kept for the larger corporates. But there were some differentiations that was made for the small and medium corporates when it came to listing of these corporates on the stock exchange. This platform is regulated by SEBI, so it's the same ambit that SEBI covers it, and the only differentiation here is that it's regulated by SEBI, but the approvals for the IPOs are given only by the stock exchange. While I talk more on this platform, I will explain to you the importance of approvals at the exchange level and how it facilitates and fastens the process. The similar trading members who trade on the NSE main board can trade on the SME board also. There's no differentiation there. And the investors who are registered and allowed for trading on the main board can also trade on the small and medium enterprises. So these were the commonalities which were kept for small and for larger boards and smaller medium exchanges, intermediaries to list to trade on the platform. Why should a company, or what is the criteria for a company to list on the stock exchange? I think a lot of thought process was put in place about, if there is a main board and there was a facility, or can we replicate the same thing for the smaller medium enterprises? If yes, why were smaller medium enterprises till now not listing the same thing, listing on the same board? And then it was realized that no, the framework that is specified for the larger corporates would not have been sufficient or adequate and would have facilitated the smaller companies also to join onto this platform. So different criteria were defined for these kind of companies. And the criteria were purely very simple, fairly, they defined it only on the paid up capital. So here the important point being is that you do not have to follow the SME definition given by the MSME Act. Here, MSME or SME is classified based on the paid up capital. So if your paid up capital is less than 25 crores, you become eligible to list on the small and medium enterprise platform. And if your paid up capital is above 25 crores, then you can list on the main board only. And here the small caveat is that in case you have a paid up capital between 10 to 25, you have an option to either list on this smaller boards or on the main migrate or on the larger board of the exchange. So up to 10 crores only SME platform, between 10 to 25 crores you can opt to list either on the main board of the exchange or on the NSE emerge platform. This were the only criteria which was specified by SEBI, but NSE added several more hygiene factors, which were 3 years of operational track record and 2 years of positive cash accruals. So if you are a company which was formed 3 years prior, okay, and you have 2 years of profitability, you can list yourself on the stock exchange. So when we introduced this criteria, a lot of entrepreneurs approached us saying that, our company is that we are in this business for years together, but we are not running this business as a private limited company or a public limited company. We are running this business either as a proprietary firm or as a partnership firm. So considering that factor also, what NSE said is 3 years of operational history would not only take incorporation of a company as a track record. Even if the promoter is in the same area and carrying on the same business for years together, and he has been only formed as a private limited company or a public limited company as near as 3 months ago, the promoter's track record would be given the benefit of operational history. So that is where we said that a lot of more SMEs could come into the ambit rather than restricting it only to the small and medium enterprises as private limited or public limited companies. So this was what most of the entrepreneurs requested for us, and we were able to actually understand the situation apprehensions and widen the eligibility criteria not only to old private limited companies, but also to newer incorporated companies, either public limited or private limited. So what is the regulatory framework for listing on the SME platform? Before I come on the regulatory platform and get into the nitty-gritties about what is the regulatory differentiation, I just want to make a point here is that, listing on stock exchange or an alternate funding mechanism is a very viable option for small and medium enterprises. Having said that, the COVID-19 has thrown up so many challenges on the entrepreneurs that it is very difficult for them to even envisage what is going to be the impact in the long term or in the short term without they having a clarity on the operationality of the lockdown. So what's important for every entrepreneur to understand here is that there would be pressing needs of short-term funds. There would be a long-term capital expansion plan or a long-term funding requirement that is also needed for a company to catapult its growth. So, it is very important that while this COVID-19 has put all the entrepreneurs into a thought process and a thought-provoking model, everybody is very cognizant of the fact is that immediately when I start my business or immediately when we get into our operational activities, what is that we need to do? And well, while we redesign our business, because I think the need of the hour is going to be redefining what you have been doing, because the normal is yesterday's normal is not going to be the normal for tomorrow. The normals have shifted. There's a paradigm shift in the way we have been doing businesses. So once the promoter is sitting across the desk with his teams deciding on what is the way forward, it is very important to keep in mind that yes, there is an alternate funding mechanisms. And if I have to tap that alternate funding mechanism of listing on the NSE Emerge platform, what is that I need to do myself? What is the preparedness that I need to get into from today onwards? What is that my company would need to do in order to list on this platform to meet the fund requirements 6 months down the line or 1 year down the line? So this is not an immediate solution that I would be able to, fit the NSE Emerge platform into the immediate fund requirements of any entrepreneur. But yes, this is an alternate funding method, and entrepreneurs can very well depend on this kind of a platform to tap the funds that are available in the public markets. And by the experience of 209 companies and 3,000 more than 3,000 crores of funds raised, this option has been a very, very viable option. So what is that an entrepreneur should take in mind while he's considering this preparedness to list themselves on the Emerge platform? What is that will give him an advantage? What has been made simpler by the regulators in order to facilitate him to list on the stock exchange and raise funds through the public markets, and how different his compliances are going to be how different his compliances are going from the main board is what I will be just talking in the next few minutes. So the eligibility criteria, as I've already explained to you, that determines whether a company can list themselves on the stock exchange or not. But meeting the eligibility criteria is not sufficient enough. There are several other informations which is required by the entrepreneur to be processed and to be documented, and then accordingly proceed forward in this journey. So how does the regulatory framework facilitate the entrepreneur to raise these funds on the public markets? Firstly, for an IPO, when an entrepreneur decides to raise funds, he comes up with an IPO. So what is the differentiation that has been kept in the IPO mechanism? In the IPO mechanism, for a main board, at least 1,000 allottees are required to subscribe to an IPO and complete an IPO. But for an SME segment, only 50 applications are needed to complete an IPO. So that recognizes the fact that SMEs will have a local outreach, will not be able to garner that kind of investor attention right from day one, and will not be able to attract hordes of investors into the company right at the time of an IPO. Hence, the allotment of only 50 applications, or the only 50 allottees, is what the requirement has been specified by the regulator here. The second important thing here is that there is a 100% underwriting that is there in SME. So what does this guarantee a promoter order? How does this give confidence to the promoter? 100% underwriting gives benefits to the promoter that, his issue, once it hits the market and an IPO is opened, he is guaranteed, or he's confident that his issue will be totally subscribed either from the investing public, or the merchant banker would underwrite his issue and give him the fund raised money that is due for him, for which the IPO was opened. So this is again a very important feature which has been there in the SME segment and which is not there on the main board segment. So this ensures two folds. One is it gives confidence to the promoter of his, that I am divesting so much of money, time, energy into this IPO process, and his fear of, will my IPO be successful? Can I actually raise funds in the public markets? Those apprehensions would be somehow kept under control due to this 100% underwriting requirement. The other benefit out of this 100% underwriting requirement is that any intermediary or the merchant banker who's facilitating the IPO will open the IPO, will open the public issue only when he's confident that he'll be able to subscribe it completely. When his investors have already agreed that they agree to this business model and they see it as a viable investment opportunity, and hence only then he will open an IPO. So this puts an obligation on a merchant banker to ensure investor participation before the IPO, and this also guarantees an entrepreneur that his IPO will not fail. So 100% underwriting is a feature which is very distinct from the main board. Another distinct feature from the main board is your market making. In this SME platform, every company which gets listed on this platform, there is a market making facility available. So at the time of an IPO, there is an intermediary called as a market maker who subscribes to the shares of this company, 5% of the shares of this company. And for 3 years from the date of listing, he provides a buy code and a sell code on a regular basis, which provides mandatory liquidity. So SME by nature could be a illiquid market. So this market maker ensures mandatory liquidity in the secondary market. So it's a very, very distinct feature again that's been given for the SME platform. On the framework side, the approvals are granted only by the stock exchange. So this ensures that the companies not only have funding available, but they have timely funding available, because it's important that entrepreneurs are able to tap the markets and tap the funds at the right time and not when they miss the opportunity. So because of an exchange approval here, the approval is at least 3 to 4 weeks. The promoter is quite, sure that he would be able to process on his IPO and start the IPO completion formalities, just because he knows that it's an exchange approval and the SEBI approval does not come into the picture. So the timelines would be reduced when it comes only to an exchange approval. So again, this is a very distinct feature that is there on the SME platform. The common features with the main board being that there is a dilution of 25%, same like the main board entity itself. On the main board also the dilution norms are 25%, and here also the main dilution norms are 25%. The compliance requirements are different for an IPO or for a list on the merge platform, and they being that you have to publish only half-yearly financial results and not quarterly financial results. Since we are talking about public funds and since we are talking about public money, it is important that the corporate governance norms for these companies are at par with main board companies. So that comes with what other simplified framework that is there in place for the SME platform. Another unique feature of this platform is that it facilitates a small and medium enterprise to seamlessly migrate from the smaller board to the main board. So we have today 33 companies which got listed originally on the SME platform, but after a gap of 2 years, or when their paid up capital crossed 25 crores, they have been able to seamlessly migrate themselves onto the board of the exchange. So 33 companies have got themselves migrated on this platform. Investment opportunities here is for a lakh rupee only. So the investors cannot invest in one share of an SME company. Mandatorily, they have to invest in lot sizes of 1 lakh and above. The process is fairly as simple to as same as the main board. The only differentiation, like I told you, is about getting an approval from the exchange and not the regulator. So it's about once the promoter feels yes that this is I am a growing business enterprise, and for me this is an alternate funding mechanism is a good option. What's the next step that he should get it to? He has to appoint an intermediary, a merchant banker, who's going to handhold him through the whole process. And they are going to be facilitating him to raise the funds and they're going to be helping him to prepare the DRHP. The DRHP would be submitted to the exchange. The exchange grants an in principle, and post the granting of the in principle and post the due diligence conducted by NSE to grant the in principle approval, the IPO could be started by the intermediary and the company, and post the completion of an IPO within 6 days the company gets listed on the platform. So it's a very seamless process, and we have seen a company get listed in as short as 100 days from the day promoter decided to list themselves on the NSE Emerge platform. So it's not a cumbersome process. It's a quite friendly process, I would say, and in fact, it's not very time consuming as our experience has shown over a period of time. I'm coming to the next point, which is about, when we have, for 209 companies to be listed on this platform, we've met more than 1,000 entrepreneurs. And most common, I think, worries that these entrepreneurs would have is when we would tell them about this platform would be, is like, I fear to lose my control over a period of time because I'm a listed entity. The listed entity puts onerous compliance requirements on me. So I don't want to be a listed entity. And the most important or a most common observation, one more common observation was that maybe I have to share confidential information because I am now a listed entity. So I will explain to you that these misnomers or these apprehensions of an entrepreneur, how they don't stand right within the framework that is being prescribed, and how the companies benefit by being a listed entity. So the most important thing is, do I lose control of the company by being listed? No. If it was so, I don't think so. We would have had even 1,700 or 1,600 companies listed on the main board. That's not the reason at all, because 25% of the equity is what you are only diluting. 75% is still with you and your promoter group and your other investors. So it's only 25% that you are diluting through the IPO mechanism. So with 25% of equity being diluted, the possibility of you losing your control is minimal. It's in fact negligible. It's not possible at all. And no shareholder would come and try to dictate the terms of doing their business to you. Just because they are a shareholder by subscription to an IPO, that doesn't give them a right to dictate the way you manage your business. The management of your business is going to be the way you have to do it, the way you have been doing it. The only thing changes is how you manage your stakeholders when you come up with an IPO and list yourself on the stock exchange. The second thing is about, you have to, the compliances are onerous and sharing of confidential information. I've already explained that it's only half year disclosures that the promoters have to get in. So today, where companies are getting even into banking funds or banking financing, these are the minimal disclosures about, what is your company's business growth plans, what is your company's next 6 months future plans, or what is your financials for the last 2 years. So I think this is what is important, and this is what the exchange also requires on a periodic basis from the companies. So there's no confidential trade secret that is required to be disseminated by the companies to the stock exchanges. So again, that is not an important concern, or that's not a concern that should be bothering any of the promoters out there. Why should a company list themselves on the stock exchange is the next frequent question that I have heard from the promoters is, what do I get by listing on the stock exchange? I can go on with the list of what are the benefits, but I'll just cap it to top 3 items or top 4 items that I feel are very relevant in today's times and challenging times that most of the entrepreneurs are going through. The company gets an excessive, and a company is actually able to enjoy a lot of visibility by being a listed entity on the stock exchange, because your every announcement, your results are disseminated on the NSE website, are flashed on all the terminals of the exchange, and hence you are now being looked at upon by people who are accessing these terminals or people who are interested in the public markets. So now your visibility increases in terms of how your company is performing, what your results have been, what is the business that you're into, what industry is doing well, is your company in that industry. So it attracts a lot of investor attention because of being a listed entity. The second important thing, and which most of my promoters have vouched for, is that they enjoy better credibility and higher credibility because they are a listed entity. Because listing entails some basic regulatory compliances. And the moment you're a listed entity, you know that everybody assumes that yes, there would be governance in place, governance norms would be in place, disclosures would be in place. At the end of the day, the board of directors would be accountable to the shareholders for some of the decisions that have been taken. So since it's a regulated entity, the credibility is manifoldly increased of these companies by being listed on the stock exchange. Banking terms. It's the most important benefit that our promoters have often spoken about, is that the moment they're a listed entity, they're able to enjoy better banking terms with the banks. So banks, when a listed entity approaches them, they look at it in a different manner. They have different rates of interest defined for these listed entities vis-a-vis unlisted entities. And most of the promoters have said that yes, there is quite a difference in the BIPS points between a listed entity banking terms and between an unlisted entity banking terms. And the moment you have banking terms which are better, you obviously make good for your bottom line. Your bottom line is directly impacted by the amount of interest saved on your balance sheet. So this is a very, very vouched for kind of a benefit that our promoters have said that they have enjoyed by being a listed entity. The fourth one, currently with the SMEs and with the manpower issues that companies are facing, retention of talent is going to be a major challenge. So while being listed entity, you can offer ESOPs to your high talented employees, and you can use this effective tool to retain talent within your organization. You can use your shares as collaterals to be pledged with banks and avail further capital into the company, and actually use this as a platform for wider capital access and benefits to the company. So like I told you, the benefits are multifold and manifold. Some of them I've already listed down to you. Maybe my colleague Himanshu from Bangalore will also share the PPT so that you can understand exactly how the companies tend to benefit by being a listed entity. One more thing which I spoke about is migration of a company. We've seen 33 companies. So this is an important platform where a company with less or I would say easier eligibility norms gets listed on the stock exchange. They enjoy the, they are within the regulated framework for a period of 2 years. So they know what the compliances are. They get used to the compliances, and after they are exposed to a regulatory environment for a period of 2 years, they seamlessly migrate to the main board. So this again allows them to understand how they are doing in the capital markets, how the company is actually geared up to face the regulatory requirements. So all this gives them as a practice field, I would say. This provides them as a practice field to actually ensure that they are a robust and a very compliant company by the time they, in the terms of regulated disclosures, by the time they migrate to the main board. So getting onto the main board is an expensive exercise with higher eligibility norms. So SME provides quite a I would say quite a simplified framework to list on the stock exchange. So with the why should a company list on stock exchange, I told you the benefits are innumerous and we can go on and on about it. But it's important that promoters take cognizance of the top 3 benefits that I have told you and understand that it benefits them in the longer run to be an listed entity. Because I think perpetual entity and succession planning is the next key thing that we would have to think post COVID-19. And this listing platform provides a great opportunity even in that context. It is a great avenue for mergers and acquisitions, consolidations, maybe the next buzzword that we would hear often. And again, a listed entity has better scopes of mergers and acquisitions. So that's from the benefit side. And we are at NSE, we are always committed to towards facilitating the small and medium enterprise to see how they can tap their funding requirements through these alternate funding mechanisms. And in our effort, in our outreach programs to create awareness of this platform, we do a lot of tie-ups with various professional bodies, Institute of Chartered Accountants, company secretaries, the chamber, and today that's why we are with the Bangalore chamber to talk to the entrepreneurs about how listing can actually be a second or an alternate funding mechanism for them to meet the fund requirements, ever growing fund requirements of a business through this platform. So NSE is always committed towards facilitating you all, creating awareness. We have a regional office at Bangalore who is consistently working towards, creating more and more awareness about this platform to the rightful entrepreneurs. We also have a listed company from Bangalore who is on our platform, and anybody is free to talk to them to understand, what is the procedure about, how simplified they felt it was about, and so we are there all the time to help you understand and walk the path with you to ensure that you have a seamless process of listing, and that's how it is. And I'll be free to take any questions now or post the session. Thank you so much, and once again, thank you BCIC for giving NSE this opportunity to be talking to the entrepreneurs at this challenging times of COVID-19. Thank you so much once again, Mr. Omprakash and the team of BCIC.
Thank you, madam. That was a wonderful insight about the listing of MSME. But one thing you have missed out is what would be the approximate expense on an issue?
Mr. Omprakash, I did not miss
You
it
were
out.
talking about merchant bankers.
Okay, see, I will tell you, it's something that as NSE, absolutely, I can say there's not a cost at all to any company, because our annual listing fee is only in the range of 10,000 to 40,000. So that's the only charge that NSE has as an annual listing fee. And yes, there could be a one-time processing fee when the company decides, but they are all 25,000, 50,000. So they are not at all a relevant factor. NSE, for NSE, SME platform is not a revenue model at all. So, we have kept bare minimum cost, or we would say bare minimum charges on the SME companies. And now you would have also seen that we have offered a rebate of 25% to our companies which have got listed on this platform on account of the COVID-19 challenging situation. So cost is never an issue for an entrepreneur. NSE cost could never be an issue, sir. Sorry, I cannot hear you, Mr.
But merchant bankers and due diligence might be slightly a cost.
Yes, sir, there would be a
Yeah,
cost
the
attached
merchant
to it.
bankers cost might be a quite heavy one.
I don't know about the heavy part of it, but I can tell you one thing is that, so this is a one-time expense that entrepreneurs would have to indulge in. And issue expenses,
Agree.
Yeah, and issue expenses can also be part of your object of the issue. A part of your issue expense also could be taken from the IPO funds itself, sir, So this is something which, it's a calculated call that the promoter has to get into. And I think entrepreneur and the merchant bankers, like you mentioned, there are specialized merchant banker for the SME segment. So they're very sensitive to the fact that, these are smaller businesses that we are dealing with. So they do not, I don't think so the charges are so exorbitant, because from what I know on a main board, any listing is at least 2 to 3 crores. That's the minimum I have heard of, The SME, it's surely not that high. It's surely not that high.
Thank you, madam, very much. A very convincing reply. I hope we all SMEs will definitely look into this. And now we move on to the next topic, that is the trade receivable discounting system. It's called the trades. And this is also an opportunity available to all the SMEs. And we are now going to introduce. Hello. Hello, there's a lot of disturbance. Yeah, now we are going to. Mr. Abheek Datta, Business Head, Receivable Exchange of India Limited. Abhishek is currently the Regional Head, Business Development of RXIL. He has a work experience of over 17 years in the banking and finance industry. Having worked in various banks and MBFCs, his field of experience is supply chain and trade finance, and has worked with multiple organizations in various capacities in this field. At RXIL, he is primarily responsible for growing the trades business across West, East, and South region and is presently based out of Mumbai. Welcome you, Mr. Abheek Datta, business head. On to you, sir.
Yeah, so thank you, Dr. Omprakash, for the introduction. Yeah, the name is Abheek Datta. You got it wrong the first couple
Yeah,
of
yeah.
times.
Sorry, sorry.
Nevertheless, thank you so much.
Sorry,
No, no,
Abheek Datta.
no.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, thank you so much, sir, for the introduction. Firstly, thank you to the Bangalore Chamber of Industry and Commerce, as well as the National Stock Exchange, for organizing this webinar, where we can share a little bit about our platform, what we do, what our XIL is, and how it can benefit the micro, small, and medium enterprises. Thank you also to Mr. Maheshwar Rao for the initial words and setting the tone of this discussion today. Primarily, he spoke about two things. One was how the SMEs would raise equity that Rachana ma'am has covered in her presentation, which NSE would take care of. The second he mentioned was about the trade receivables discounting system, wherein the MSMEs can liquidate their receivables. So I represent RXIL, which is the Receivables Exchange of India Limited. As introduced, I'm the regional head. I take care of the western, southern, and eastern regions. I'm based out of Mumbai, um, and so we'll briefly talk about the products and things like that. I do have a small presentation to share, but before that, I will just like to talk a little bit about what RXIL is, what we do, and how it can benefit the small and medium enterprises, micro, small, and medium rather. Uh, so RXIL is actually a joint venture. We are actually a platform. We operate the platform, and it's a joint venture between SIDBI and the National Stock Exchange. And the other participants and other shareholders, rather, in the company are SBI, ICICI Bank, and Yes Bank. So we have a pretty strong, shareholders who are there largely from the finance industry, and they know this business. So SIDBI obviously has been largely they only work on this particular segment, and so we have used the expertise of all these organizations to build up what we have today. Uh, the primary purpose of developing this whole system, what we are calling today as the trade receivables discounting system, is there has been large scale delays in payments, to the MSME sector. Um, there have been various discussions on what is the quantum of outstanding amounts. If we recall, 2019, last year before Diwali, when the Honorable Finance Minister, um, she spoke about these outstanding. So she had quoted a figure of 45,000 crores across this industry, which are dues, which are overdue rather, which was to be paid off, and she had asked all PSUs and corporates to clear off all these dues before Diwali. That was the time when obviously this COVID situation was not there, the lockdown was not there, and at that time only they were talking about the government figure. Obviously, they were talking about 45,000 crores. Today, when we are in this situation, given the lockdown and the COVID situation, and we have seen a couple of weeks back when the government have announced the economic package of 20 lakh crores over 5 days, and during one of these 5 days, the MSME minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, he was there on CNBC, talking about whatever the offers which were being made to this sector, and he was asked that what is the approximate dues which are there to this sector. He had quoted, and that interview is still there on CNBC. He quoted a figure of 5 lakh crores. 5 lakh crores is the outstanding figure to the MSME sector, and he also mentioned that this figure is only from the central and state governments. So he's not even including the private sector, the corporates. You're only talking about central and state governments, and he quoted a figure of 5 lakh crores. Now, this 5 lakh crores obviously will not be overdue, so to say. It will probably be an outstanding figure. So let's say MSME has supplied and he's due to get payment, and he has not got the payment as yet. So I would perhaps believe that this 5 lakh crores includes those numbers also. But still, if you come to look at it, it's very, very large. This whole, the 5 lakh crore figure, it's huge. So obviously this, the wheel of the economy, which we refer to as the MSME sector, it's kind of choked with all these things. So there are no receivables, no funding which is happening. They're not able to, get these receivables, what is owed to them. And so this whole genesis of this whole platform was this. Many years back, the work on this started. And here it's a platform where these MSMEs can come on the platform, get their invoices discounted from your buyer. The buyer could be a public sector undertaking, could be a corporate. You can come and get your invoices discounted. So we have basically 3 participants on the platform. One, of course, is the MSMEs who we are trying to help out. Then is the corporate buyer or the public sector undertaking. And then, of course, the financiers who do all the biddings and who are actually discounting the invoices. So all these 3 participants, there are various benefits. All these participants will they get out of it. I will cover that in my presentation. But just to share, one of the largest public sector undertaking, which is Bharat Heavy Electricals Limited, they've been on RXIL platform for the last 8-9 months, I understand. And in these last 8-9 months, so let's say in the first 6 months before this lockdown and all started, we had done transactions to the tune of something like 300 crores plus, and all the vendors, and this is only one division I'm talking about. BHEL has about 25 divisions across the country. We have only started, or let's say actively, we have started with only one of these 25 divisions, and we have done 300 crores there. And the interest saved, even Rachana ma'am spoke about interest, that hits your bottom line, the interest, what these MSMEs are saving. The interest saved by the MSME vendors on these 300 crores is to the tune of 6 crores. That's just the interest which these MSMEs cumulative, obviously, have saved while we have done these 300 crores transactions over 6 months. So that is a type of benefits which the MSMEs can, kind of get out of this platform. We have invited Mr. Wilfred Simon, who's from the finance department of BHL Trichy. BHL Trichy is the one we are doing active transactions with. So Mr. Simon will kind of share his views and his feedback on how things have been doing, how BHL has benefited while actively participating on trades and on RXIL. So he will share. Thank you for joining us, sir. On the vendor side, how vendors have benefited from this, we have Miss Hiral Valia. She's the CEO of a company named East India Drums and Barrels based out of Mumbai. They are one of the large vendors to all the oil marketing companies, all your IOCL, BPCL, HPCL. Plus there are other corporates also they are supplying. They have been with RXIL for the last year and a half, and we will hear from her how their company has benefited by coming onto the Trades platform and doing regular transactions. So thank you both of you for agreeing to come and join us. I will now start my presentation. While the presentation is on, if you have any questions which you may wish to ask, I think you can come onto the chat box and raise the queries. I have quite a few of my team members who have also joined this webinar. So we have Shangri-La, who handles the Bangalore market. So she's here. Mahalakshmi, who handles the Chennai market, she's here. I saw Ruchi also, she had joined, who's my counterpart for North. So she's based out of Delhi. I believe Kailash, who's our CFO, he's also here, and several other of my colleagues are also here. So they will be, so while I go take you through the presentation, if there are any queries, you may write to the chat box, and one of them will definitely revert to you. And if there's a time, we will take queries at the end, which I'll be more than happy to take. Okay, so sir, how do I get this on the screen? What is Dr. Omprakash, I need to get this on the screen.
Yeah, I think Prithvi, they have shared it.
It is visible.
It is
Sir,
visible.
Sorry, can I use my presentation which I have? I can only see a part of it actually. That's the problem.
Maybe you have to adjust your.
Okay. Yeah. Is the screen visible now?
Yeah, it's visible.
It's clear.
It's perfect.
Okay. Thank you.
Visible,
Okay.
visible.
So I'll start. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay. So I'll start. Now MSME obviously is a big contributor to the economy. These are what the current status is. It provides employment to 11 crore individuals. They contribute 29% to the India's GDP and 45 of the total exports. Again, I'll be quoting you some figures. These are again mentioned mentioned by the MSME Minister, Mr. Nitin Gadkari, at various forums. At various forums he quotes. So the target of this government in the second term of this government, 2019 to 2024, the target is to take this employment figure from 11 crores up by 5 crore, 11 crores up by 5 crores to 16 crores. That is a target of the government over these 5 years. Of course, the situation was not the same some time back. Now with this COVID situations, things may not be as simple as what it was earlier, but I'm sure the government will work out and try and find a way to generate this employment. 29% of the GDP as it stands today, the target of the government is take it up to 38 to 40% of GDP over the next 5 years, probably heading towards 50% of the GDP by the end of this term of the government. These are so there was a study. This is some study done by Economic Times. So we are just quoting those figures as to how the MSMEs have been faring and what are the issues which these MSMEs have been largely facing. They supply. The first graph talks about who they supply to. So we're talking about 48%. So large part of it is going to the private sector. They're also supplying to public sector undertakings, to the government departments, to other SMEs also. Now look at the payment cycle. So 44% they're saying it's unpredictable. So we don't know. So even if they have a credit period of let's say 30 days or 45 days, they do not end up receiving the payment within that span of time. It goes much beyond that. You look at the third graph, bottom left. You know, 1/3 is probably saying we don't get monies even within 90 days. So it goes even beyond that. So obviously it is becoming a big problem. If you look at the MSME Act, it talks about payments to all MSMEs needs to be made within 45 days. But obviously that's not how things are going. It goes much beyond that. Here we are talking of figures of 90 days. So 1/3 are saying it goes beyond 90 days also. 17% of MSMEs are even writing off 20% of all the receivables which they are going to. So obviously, as you can understand, there's a lot of problem. So upper we have mentioned a figure of 40,000 crores and 48,000 crores from the PSUs. So these figures are, I think, a little dated. Figures today will be much higher given this situation of lockdown and all. So things are just getting from bad to worse as far as these MSMEs goes. Lot of efforts have been taken from the government side. We must appreciate that as well. The MSME Act was enacted in 2006, wherein they mandated that all the payments to MSMEs have to be made within 45 days from the goods acceptance date. Lot of them, I think, do follow this, but still there seems to be certain delays. If there are cash flow problems, it will lead to certain delays. 2012 government mandated all companies who have who are auditing their balance sheets will have to specify the MSME outstanding as of 31st of March every year. So any balance sheet you see now, we do see the MSME outstanding figures. So 2015 is when they created the MSME Samadhan, wherein any query or any complaints or issues it gets addressed over there. And in 2015 is where we actually come into the picture, wherein RBI first issued the guidelines for the trade receivables discounting system, and that was where it actually RXIL and the whole platform business we started. Just take you to the background and the evolution. So actually the genesis of this whole platform and trade receivables, it started from 2008-2009 during Dr. Raghuram Rajan's time. when obviously this problem was, they had envisaged that this is going to be a huge problem going forward in the economy here. So they started working on something of this sort, which was planned long time back. Mexico apparently works on a similar platform. So there was a team of SIDBI who had actually gone down to Mexico, studied this whole platform, studied the benefits and how it works and everything. They studied in detail. That team came back to India, and then they shared their experience and shared their inputs. And on those lines, work on trends actually began. 2014 and 2000 early 15 was when the guidelines were first issued by RBI, and NSE and SIDBI jointly they applied for a license at that time. They had shown an interest in applying for a license. December 2015 is when NSE and SIDBI got the in principle approval for setting up a platform under the Payments and Settlements Act. And in February 2016 was they formed RXIL. So RXIL is, as I mentioned earlier, is a joint venture between SIDBI and NSE, with both holding 30% share in RXIL. So RXIL was then formed in February 2016. And the final approval for RXIL to start operations came in December 2016. And in the first quarter of 2017 was when we did the first set of transactions. The first set of transactions, of course, were the public sectors. Hindustan Aeronautics was the first. The oil companies, Indian Oil and BPCL and all, they started coming in. So initial trust was on the public sector units, but then of course the corporates and the private sector, they also started coming in and they started transacting on the platform. So it's again a JV, as we mentioned. I'll just run quickly through this. So SIDBI and NSE both hold 30% in RXIL. SBI holds another 16%. ICICI holds another 16%, and Yes Bank holds the remaining 8%. On the platform. So as I mentioned earlier, we have largely three participants. We have buyers, we have sellers. These are MSME sellers we are referring to, and then we have financiers. So today, as we speak, I have close to 500 buyers on our platform. These buyers vary, spreads across public sector undertakings, private sector, both. Sellers are MSME sellers. I have crossed 2,000 MSME sellers on our platform as of now. And we have about 35 financiers who are there on our platform, who are registered financiers on our platform. And this varies from public sector banks to private banks to foreign banks and to NBFC factors. NBFCs as of now are currently not allowed to participate on the trades exchanges. However, in the 2019 budget, which was read out in July, NBFCs have been allowed to participate on trades, but we are still awaiting the notification post which NBFCs will then start actively participating on the trades platform. And we as RXIL, we are running this exchange, and we are getting all these three participants together. So now when there is a seller, the seller is supplying some goods to the buyer. The buyer is giving an acceptance against that invoice. The financier is, buying out those receivables from the buyer, moving it on to himself. They are making payment to the vendors upfront. So the vendor receives payment upfront, and on due date, when the buyer is supposed to make payment to the vendor, will now make payment to the financier. So that's the cycle, how the settlement and all happens. There's a lot of benefit I will cover in the next few slides, but this is broadly how it functions. Also now, there is one buyer. One buyer will obviously have multiple MSME vendors. One vendor can be supplying to multiple buyers, both public sector as well as on the corporate side. So how does the platform determine you are supplying to whom and whose invoice are you getting discounted? So we create on the platform something which is called the buyer-seller link, wherein we will create a link between one MSME vendor to one buyer. If that vendor is supplying to buyer 2, so we'll create a similar link with buyer 2, and then with buyer 3 and buyer 4, depending on how many buyers you have, you can create links on the platform and you can get your invoices discounted. The only catch here is that the buyer also needs to be there registered on my platform. Without the buyer being registered, I will not be in a position to kind of discount those invoices. these are few parameters we will define while we are creating the buyer seller link. So there's a cap rate which can be specified. So we can specify, let's say 9% rate. So no invoice can be discounted higher than 9%. So those rates can be fixed. Anything below that will get accepted. Then there's a option of who's the cost bearer. So either the buyer or the seller, there's an option. Either of the two participants can take the cost. They can split the cost and do all sorts of permutation, combination. All those features are available on the platform. These parameters, of course, these are raised by the buyer. So buyer in agreement with the vendor will decide as to who will take the cost and how much proportion of the cost will be taken by either or 100% by one. On the transaction cost, we have option of splitting it between the buyer and the seller. And then there's a default credit period. So today, let's say the vendor is supplying to a buyer at let's say a 45-day credit period. So that default credit period, the buyer will need to mention in that buyer seller link. So if it's a 45-day credit, the vendor gets paid off on day one, and on 45th day, the buyer pays off to the financer. What we also have is what we refer to as an extended credit period. Now, an extended credit period is something like if let's say there are cash flow issues of a particular buyer even at 45 days. So even if you create a buyer seller link at 45 days, vendor gets paid off, that's done. But then on 45th day, the buyer may not be in a position to repay the financer, or the buyer envisages some sort of cash flows going forward. So the buyer can avail an extended credit period up to a maximum of 180 days. Now, given this current situation of COVID and a lockdown and industry not working, it's just starting to take off. And even if it starts completely, it is not going to be working at 100% capacity. Offices are going to be working at 30-40% capacity. So will be the factories, right? So there is, what we see, there will be a cash flow problem, and that cash flow problem for corporates and PSUs is not going to be for next 1 or 2 months. It's probably going to be a lot more protracted. It will go on for, my estimate will be at least for the next 6 to 12 months. There will be cash flow issues which companies will face. So we have seen a lot of corporate buyers, a lot of PSUs who lately, in the last month or so, they have come forward and they have started availing this extended credit period. You can, as I said, go up to a maximum of 180 days, where in the first 45 days, the cost the MSME vendor can take. The remaining period, over and above the first 45 days, will be taken by the buyer, whosoever the buyer is, because it's a facility which is given to the buyer. So buyer will need to take that cost. So as long as buyer is okay to take that cost, buyer can. That's a facility which is available on the platform. Okay, so we'll just take you through the process flow a little bit in detail. So these are the three participants: the MSME vendor, the buyer, the financer. RXL, we are there in the middle. We are the platform owners. Now we are saying invoice uploaded. So invoice uploading will happen once the goods or service is supplied to the buyer. But there is actually a leg which is before this, which is the buyer would be raising a purchase order on the MSME vendor. Why we have not included that over here in this graph is that because the purchase order bit, the trades does not cater to purchase order discounting or purchase order financing. Our work starts only after the material is supplied to the buyer and the invoices are raised. So hence we have not included the PO bit over here. So once the goods are manufactured or the service provided, the invoice is raised on the buyer. The buyer acts as a counterparty. Now, when the financer is coming and discounting the invoices, the risk the financer is taking is on the buyer. So in the case of BHEL, the risk is on BHEL. So hence, and it's not on the vendors. The vendors are relatively smaller. They will not have a credit rating. The banks or financiers will not be doing a credit appraisal on the vendors. It's also a without recourse facility for the vendors. So the risk is completely on the buyer. So we need a counterparty approval. So the buyer needs to accept that invoice before it comes for financing onto the platform. Without the buyer acceptance, no invoice is going to come onto the platform, and no invoices is going to be visible to any of the financiers for bidding. So then we get what we call as a counterparty approval. So once the buyer accepts it, then we get the financial bids. There are, as I mentioned, 35 financiers Depending on who the buyer is, as many financiers out of those 35 are free to participate. So the first financer will bid something, let's say 9%. The second financer will come and outbid and bid at 8.5. Third can come and outbid and bid at 8.25. And so these things continue depending on how many financiers are willing to take a risk on that buyer. They will continuously keep bidding. To give you an indicative rates, what we are currently generating on our platform, the lowest rate we have got is 6.05% per annum. It goes up to 10%, but I think 80 to 85% of the invoices which are factored on our platform will happen between 6.05 and 8%. Few low-rated corporates will probably go upwards of 9, closer to 10%. So that's kind of, oil company vendor, they are getting at 6.05 or 6.1%. Even probably the buyer, which could be a AAA rated corporate, is perhaps not availing funding, direct credit from any bank at those sort of rates. But their MSME vendors are able to get these rates largely because it's on the platform, and there are so many financiers who are willing to take a risk, and it's an online bidding process. 6.05%, which I'm saying is, post the first 75 basis point which happened, and the last Friday when we had the 40 basis point repo rate cut, that has still not been passed on. So anytime in the near future, maybe between today, tomorrow, anytime in the next few days, we may actually go sub 6% also on the platform. So we look forward to that, because banks will obviously pass on the 40 basis point which has been cut by RBI, or some part of it at least. So after the bid, the bids, as I said, will keep going down. If the vendor is taking the cost, vendor may be okay with this 8% rate. Vendor will come on the platform and accept that 8% rate. Once the bid rate is accepted, we will generate what is called an obligation file, which will show the payment to be done by whom and on which day. So on day one, the day the invoice gets factored, the next day the vendor will get paid off. We work in 2 sessions. The platform is operational from 9 in the morning to 9 in the evening, and there are 2 sessions in this. 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. is the first session. 4 p.m. to 9 p.m. is the second session. Any bids which are accepted before 4 p.m. has a T+1 settlement, so the vendor will get paid off the next day. If the rate is accepted post 4 p.m., the vendor will get paid it's a T+2 settlement. The vendor gets paid off the day after next. But the vendor gets paid, vendor is completely out of the picture, and on due date, then the buyer gets debited and the respective financer gets paid off for the principal amount. So that is how the whole process flow between all these participants work. It's a seamless process, completely online, completely digital, no manual intervention required at any leg, and it's completely working fine. As I mentioned, we have 500 buyers, over 2,000 MSMEs who are there, and 35 financiers. And as we speak, these numbers are going up continuously. So there are now 2 products which are there on the platform. One, of course, is the plain vanilla factoring. Then there's a reverse factoring which happens. Factoring is when the MSME vendor takes on the cost. So the process by and large remains the same. The seller is uploading the invoice. The buyer as a counterparty is accepting it. After the acceptance, the finances come into the picture. They will start bidding. The vendor will accept the bid because the vendor is the cost bearer. The financiers then pay off the vendor either next day or the day after next, and the settlement happens on due date when the buyer is debited for the principal amount and the financier is paid off. The other process is the reverse factoring, wherein the buyer may decide to get these invoices discounted on the platform and make payment to the vendors because they upfront are facing some cash flow problems. So the cost is completely taken by the buyers. The process again remains by and large the same, except for the fact that because it is uploaded by the buyer, or the buyer has an option to upload invoices over here. It need not to go back to the vendor for a counterparty acceptance. Although there are instances where that does happen, but by and large, in most of the cases, it is deemed to be accepted by the buyer and hence, or both the parties, and hence it flows to the auction platform directly. So once the buyer uploads, the financiers will then immediately start bidding. Once the bid is accepted by the buyer, they will again get, the vendor will get paid off either the next day or the day after next, and then due date again, the buyer will get buyer's account, designated account will get debited, and the vendor and the financer gets paid off over here. Now let's look at what are the benefits of the MSMEs. We have a representative over here, so she will speak about the benefits they have achieved over the last year and a half since they've started transacting on the RXL Trades platform. But yeah, firstly, the biggest advantage for the MSME vendor is that it is a without recourse facility for the vendors. So once the payment is made to the MSME vendor, there is no liability whatsoever. In your plain vanilla vendor discounting programs which banks run, the final liability remains with the vendor. So even if they take a cash flow comfort from the buyers, in an eventuality wherein there is a default from at the buyer's end, the financer or the bank will eventually go back to the vendor and claim the funds. Not on trades, it's a without recourse facility. There is no liability whatsoever of the vendor. In case of a default, the liability rests with the buyer. The financer will take it up with respective buyers, even if it has to go legal or whatever. It's with the buyer, nothing to do with the MSME vendor. Low cost of funds, as I mentioned, I gave you an indication of the kind of rates we are generating these days on the platform, which is expected to go down even more now. And these are unsecured completely without any documentation with any of the financiers. Any of the financiers can discount those invoices. You need not have any bilateral arrangement with any of the financiers. Now, the MSME vendor obviously has an option of going to the market and availing some sort of working capital facility, be it a cash credit limit or working capital limit. But those obviously will be collateralized, securitized, mortgage, hypothecation, with guarantees, security checks, and all these things will be given. In spite of all that security being provided, you will still probably be availing funding at 12%, 14%, 16%. If you're availing business loans, it is still upwards of 18, 20, 24%. There are instances which happen. So against those sort of figures, you are here availing without any liability, without any recourse, without any documentation, availing at 6, 7, 8%. So it's a huge benefit financially. And as I mentioned, the BHL vendors example, they have saved interest cost, a cumulative figure of 6 crores in just 6 months' time, and that is only one division of BHL. So you can just imagine what is the scope of this platform, how much benefit the MSMEs can generate out of this, by just coming on the platform and doing transactions and getting out. Not only do you get your payment upfront, you at least save so much on the interest. Multiple financiers, as I said, 35 financiers are there. Any of these financiers are free to come in and discount your invoices. You need not have any sort of bilateral arrangement with any of the financiers. They are free to do anything over here on the platform. So all 35 financiers are open to you. And of course, you are getting payment upfront, which is there. Now, what's in it for the buyers? So obviously, buyers also keep asking a lot of questions that what's in it for me? It's only the vendors who are benefiting. I don't. So whatever the rates or whatever the benefits the MSME is generating from this platform or deriving from this platform is largely because of the buyer. It's because of the strength and the credit rating and the credit profile of the buyers that the financiers are doing at 6% or 6.5% or 7%. You'll probably obviously not be doing it directly to a vendor, to an MSME vendor. So because of the strength of the buyer, they are getting these sort of rates. So a lot of time we have seen the buyer then goes and avails some sort of a credit or a cash discount from the respective vendor. So that's of course a bilateral arrangement between the buyer and their vendors, nothing to do on the platform, but that is something which they can avail. The buyer also is now open to all my 35 financiers. Buyer need not go and sign any bilateral arrangement, no sanction letters to be signed by the buyer. You don't have to go and sign any agreements with the buyer. You don't have to provide any collateral security to these buyer to the financiers. Nothing. No documentation to be done. Or your only documentation, which is during registration with RXL, which you're doing while onboarding on the platform, and that is it. There's nothing much beyond that which is required, and it opens you up to all the 35 financiers. And because you have so many financiers participating on the platform. Because of that, you get such fine rates, as I mentioned. Um, so that's a big benefit for the financier. Howsoever big the corporate may be, you will obviously not be having relationship with 35, maybe 10, 15 of my financiers who are there. You will probably be having some sort of bilateral arrangement, some sort of consortium arrangement you may be having, but obviously not all 35. But here it opens up to all the remaining financiers. Whosoever is willing to participate is free to participate and take an exposure on you. The third and the biggest advantage, given the current situation, is, as I extended previously, is on the extended credit period. There is going to be cash flow concerns going forward. So the buyers can now avail the extended credit. You can avail maybe up to 90 days, or in few cases we have seen it has even gone up to 180 days. So wherein the cost is split between both the buyer and the vendor, as I explained earlier. But that is a big advantage. Even we have seen, without naming the corporates, we have seen even AAA rated corporates who have come to us and who have said that yes, they do feel there will be some cash flow issues going forward, and hence they are considering availing this and starting on these lines. So you can imagine, if AAA rated corporates are saying like this, then you can well imagine the others. Everyone is going to face some sort of problem somewhere. So it's a good opportunity for the buyers, for the public sector, as well as on the private side. The corporates is a good opportunity for you. Without defaulting anywhere, you can avail this. And whatever rates I'm quoting, 6.5 or 7% or 6.05%, those are the rates which are not only applicable for the vendor. If the buyer is availing a extended credit period, that rate is also applicable for that buyer. So you as a buyer may not be getting that sort of rate in the market, but here you can actually, from the buyer perspective also, it is a marginal benefit only. So because today you're paying off using your cash credit amount, cash credit facility, and paying off the financer, there you can avail that extended credit at much lower cost. Then the financiers, there are financiers also. What benefits the financiers get? One biggest benefit is there is something called a priority sector lending for the bank. So 40% of all the credits which the bank gives, which a bank extends, 40% of that needs to go to priority sector. Priority sector is largely your agri sector, your MSMEs, and things like that. So any transaction or any discounting which they do on the Trends platform qualifies as a priority sector lending. So hence we see a lot of active participation from these financiers. Mainly, obviously your PSU public sector banks are there, but we also see a lot of participation from foreign banks who generally fall short of that 40% target and who kind of cover it up over here. They are able to generate a lot of business over here and reach that 40% threshold limit which is needed. Likewise, for the buyer, the financier also gets access to all my buyers here. Out of my 500 buyers, the financier may have relationship with, let's say, 50, 100 of them. It obviously will not be 500, but here on the platform, the financier is open to have and discount invoices and have a relationship with 500 of them. No one stops them. They don't have to go again, as I explained, through the documentation. They don't have to issue sanction letters. They don't have to, sign agreements with the buyer and all. On the platform, everything happens. They are free to take a call and take as per their internal credit and risk assessment. They will define a limit on a particular buyer and they will come and do transactions. No one stops them from doing it. Of course, it's an automated process as we discussed earlier. So these are broadly, because you obviously get high rated corporates over here, the risk chances of any default are minimal. I'll not say zero. The chances of default are minimal. So these were the benefits which all the three participants can get while coming onto the platform. Few initiatives which the government has taken. Initiatives uh, it has
अच्छा, बोला क्या? Hello.
Hello.
Yeah, can you hear us?
Yes.
I think the moderator should log in once again. Himanshu, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can.
Yes, we
Why
can.
don't yeah, we can. No, so why don't we go to the next speaker?
We are coordinating. Just give us a minute.
Yeah. I think Om Prakash has arrived. Om Prakash, sir, please go ahead, sir.
இப்போ கேக்குதா? Hello. Yeah, there seems to be a
Yeah,
technical. Yeah,
Om Prakash, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
It's Hiral Valia. She has finished. I was not in the room. Has Hiral Valia?
No. You can invite her.
Is she around? I think I saw her. I saw her logging in.
Yes, sir, I can hear you. I'm around.
Yeah, and Mr. Wilfred Simon is also there.
Yeah, Mr. Om Prakash, this is Abheek here. Sorry, I got disconnected big time. So,
Yeah, you and
so yeah,
everybody.
I was more or less finished. So I was more or less finished. So you can continue with the next.
Yeah, I think both of you can share your experiences on the trades, Hiral and Wilfred.
Sir, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hiral Valia. Can you all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Thank you, Mr. Om Prakash ji, and thank you, BCIC, for giving me the opportunity to share my experience on this platform. And thank you very much, RXIL and Mr. Abheek ji. We are a barrel manufacturing company. We have our unit in Daman and Sonipat, Haryana. We have been registered with RXIL since December 2018. Just to share my experience, when we got registered with RXIL, the rate of interest that we did our initial bill discounting was 8.10%. And we cater to a larger PSU units like HPCL, BPCL, IOCL, and ONGC. It is a great help for us to route our money through RXIL. During the COVID situation also, our plant was very much operational. And as we cater to the PSU segments, the barrel requirement was on during that time. But I must thank to RXIL that the rate of interest went as low as 6.05%. during the COVID situation, which actually helped us the fund rotation really immediately. And as Mr. Abheek Datta just mentioned, that the rate of interest is going to go further low. I will be waiting from tomorrow that the bills that we discount it as at the rate of interest of 6%. I would like to share that the bill discounting in the financial year 1920, the financial year 2019 and 20, we totally discounted around 62 crores of bills through RXIL. Totally, I would like to say we discounted 2,646 bills routed through RXIL. And comparing with the bank rate of interest that we were just talking, the bank rate of interest as of now is around 11.40%. And the same is discounted through RXIL at 6.05%. The average, if I see the cost saved on the interest part, has been close to 13 lakh per annum. So that is a great saving for an MSME for an annual thing. And our turnover also, if I may mention, went in last 2018 to 2019 financial were around 127 crores. With the help of RXIL and TREDS platform, after registering and discounting maximum bills through them, it has jumped to 185 crores in the last financial year. I would like RXIL to have maximum corporate companies to register, which would really help MSME sectors for the immediate fund rotation. Thank you very much, Mr. Abheek Datta. Hello.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Omprakash ji, and thank you the entire team for having us on this session today. Thank you.
Definitely welcome, madam. And Mr. Simon, do you have something to share with us?
Sir, in the first place, I thank you, Mr. Omprakash. Respected speakers of the day, Mr. Maheshwar Rao, the other speakers, Ms. Rachana, Datta, and Hiral, and the organizers of the webinar, and you, my participants, very warm good evening to you all. So I would thank the BCIC and the NSE for choosing BHL to represent the buyer side. So let me just take you through the session of introducing. I'm working in BHL. BHL has played a pivot role in shaping the engineering and manufacturing capability of India across several sectors, including power, transmission, industry, transportation, renewable energy, oil and gas, and defense, touching annual revenue of approximately $4 billion. It has a strength of largest employers engineering sector with approximately 34,000 highly skilled employees, which includes 9,000 engineers. We in Trichy are one of the major manufacturing divisions of BHL. It comprises of high pressure boiler plant, seamless steel tube lamps located both in Trichy, industrial valves plant at Govindwal, piping center at Chennai. BHL has developed so many vendors in and around Trichy. Many of them are our ancillaries and job workers, given the nature of our manufacturing unit. The average purchases per annum for BHL Trichy is around 2,800 crores, of which MSME vendors alone contribute to 760 crores. We have total MSME vendor base of 776. We have encouraged quicker payment terms to them, which is even lesser for some cases than the MSMED Act. So subsequent to the, I think all have taken through your session, I'll just brief it. Subsequent to government gazette notification, making it mandate for all the PSUs and all the companies with 500 crores turnover and above should mandatorily get themselves onboarded in TREDS platform. So accordingly, BHL has opted for RxL platform, and we encourage the vendors to get themselves onboarded. The RxL team, headed by Mr. Ulagayan, the then head business. Hello. The then head business development spearheaded this project, along with his dedicated team members and with the support of Mrs. Mahalashmi, Relationship Manager South. BHL Trichy completed the registration process and started accepting the instruments since March 2019. Since then, it is a comfortable journey for all of us. A step further to this, it was initially we are doing it manual, logging in and accepting and proposal all were taking place. After some time, there is some system integration going on between us. So now everything is going seamless. The data from RxL server is transferred into our ERP server every day. And from our server, the information goes to RxL server. So the vendor is able to view instantaneously the data that is available. Initially, when we asked the vendors to go, I think Mrs. Mahalashmi and this team and her team were visiting vendors in their forums. They had different forums. So they were making representation asking them to register. And we also in our vendor meets were continuously asking them to avail the benefits. Initially, the vendors were of the apprehension that BHL payment terms were good. And they said why we should lose unnecessarily some 6% or 7% interest, or they were also apprehending why I should pay extra charges towards the registration. That was one time. Then slowly on seeing the other vendors who are getting the payment terms, payment on the 8th day or the 10th day, depending on their material acceptance, they were also getting them slowly onboarded. And as on date, we have roughly some 260 vendors onboarded. A number of bills processed. We came online. Our system integration was done in September. From then on, it was a smooth sailing, and many vendors got themselves registered. And around in 200 days, if you imagine, 6,020 bills were discounted, of which the highest ever bill discounted was 1,200 bills in February alone. And value of such bills, as Mr. Datta said, roughly 306 crores. So average cash realization for the vendors is around 7 to 8 days from the day they present the bills to the RxL counters. And many of the vendors since then were having very good time with as their capital, the liquidity is there, early cash realization is there. They're able to venture into new business. They're able to quote competitively, even competing with other bigger market players. As the interest burden is low, as because the discounting is done at 7% or 8%, their bottom line is increased. So their borrowing from bank has reduced because as the money is received by them on the 7th or 8th day, they're able to repay the loans they've taken from the banks or financial institutions. And also they're able to enjoy better credit facilities with their sellers. Previously, they were paying interest on the raw materials they're purchasing. Now they're able to pay the money back, and they're able to, above all this, they're able to retain their talent. Since the money was locked in raw materials, they were not able to pay salaries, some of them. Now, as the money is going to the pocket seamlessly without any problem, they're able to pay their employees. Hence, they're able to retain the talent. They're able to retain the business. And they're able to pay the statutory dues. Thereby, they're avoiding so many penalties and interest, which has a natural impact on the bottom line. Then we also give the vendors the option of discounting. So the vendor can, once the discount, they can opt for discounting or not. Suppose the bill value is less, they need not have to opt the route of RxL. They can present the bills directly, and the payment will be going as per the agreed PO terms, which is subject to MSU Media Act. Then the benefits for BHL. The results of the above has a cascading effect on our side also. As the liquidity position of the vendor has improved, they have ensured timely delivery of goods, which in turn has enabled us honor our delivery commitments with our customers. As the materials are received in time, BHL is able to bill and collection cycle, BHL's billing cycle and collection cycle has improved considerably. We are benefited by the competitive offers we are receiving, thereby it has resulted in marginal reduction of cost of purchases. Also, previously we used to have employees, vendors following up for payment and for the status of bills. Though we have B2B system, the vendors can view the status of the bills, they can view what is happening to the bills, where and whose table it is, and they will also send their representatives for follow-up actions. Because of RX sale, they are done away with this process. They're able to stay back in their business establishments. They're able to see where the bills are, and once the bills crosses our table, they know they're there for discounting, and they get the money on the second day. Thereby, we are able to concentrate more on our work and in turn increasing the productivity. Vendor base is increased over the time. On seeing us registered with RX sale, the vendors, more MSME vendors have started quoting in our bids. The system is so very seamless that no extra time is spent on logging in and accepting at various levels. There's a second sec on BHL on honoring our MSME commitments. So government's expectations on fulfilling the MSME requirements is also getting fulfilled. Teaching unit has ever been a pioneer in coming up with implementing several initiatives, and this is one of them. On the whole, this journey with RX sale is enriching. It has enabled us address all the MSME issues. We are happy that the relationship has improved between us and the MSME vendors. We wish more and more vendors get themselves onboarded and reap the benefits. I thank once again all of you for the listening, and I thank BCIC, I thank NSE, and I thank the RXL team for the support they've given us. Thank you.
Thank you, Wilfred. That was a fantastic insight you had given about the trades. And now we move on to the
Thank you, sir.
members. Members, if anybody has any questions, we have Mrs. Rachana and we have Abheek Datta, both on MSME, and any questions can be put forth, or you can also post it on the chat box so that I can communicate to them. So floor is open for any questions. Well, I don't see any questions coming up. I have a personal question to Abheek Datta. That you're there, Mr. Abheek?
Yes, Dr. Omprakash, please go ahead.
So the whole system looks very a little bit complex. I think we need to have a specific workshop for this to the MSMEs is what I feel.
Yes, certainly. So generally how we take it forward is, we initiate this whole discussion with a particular buyer, which could be a corporate or a PSU. And so initial registration happens of the buyer, and then they in turn introduce us to their vendors, which could be several hundreds in number. And then we take it up from there. So of course, then we, have vendor meets, and through these webinars, we address all the vendor base, and we try and do this. So it's not as complex as it seems. It's pretty straightforward. Once we come on the the participants come on the platform, they will realize it's pretty much straightforward how it happens.
And RXLI normally help everybody who are trying to register. They give an assistance training. How is it?
Yes. So we have a fairly large team from the operations side who will be in touch. So, and we have a completely online registration process completely for the vendors, wherein once they start the onboarding journey, we will have someone dedicated to that particular vendor, and they can so they will be in touch, and any help which the vendor would require, So we'll have people who will guide them and help them through the entire journey.
Fantastic. So we will again reassemble maybe a dedicated workshop on this should be satisfying the needs. And as
Sure,
of
sir,
now, I
sure,
not
definitely.
much of awareness has come into the system.
That's correct, yes.
Yeah, and the banks are also trying to push this in, but I know today we have all these lockdowns. I think it should clear in the next few months to come.
That's right, yes, yes. It should. It is picking up. Albeit slowly, it is picking up now.
Yeah, but at least in Mumbai, I think we see a lot of transactions happening, and we are happy that you are able to get some influence.
Yes, sir, yes.
Thanks, Wilfred, for having come here and participated, and Hiral, and
Yes, sir.
also
Thank you, sir.
I don't know, Maheshwar Rao is around. I think he's left. The chairman, Mr. Ganesh, is there.
Hello,
Mr.
sir.
Ganesh.
This is Jay Kumar. Sir, this is Jay Kumar from Maheshwar Rao sir's office. He has just
Okay.
gone to a meeting.
No issues, no issues, sir. Just we wanted to, tell you vote of thanks. I thought if he's around, I would just acknowledge him. Anyways, Prithvi, is there anything to be added? I think the question answer sessions is also getting over. I was just looking whether if chairman is there, he could share his views.
Dr. Omprakash, sir.
Yeah.
There is one question from Mr. A.N.S. Rao.
Yeah.
He is asking any minimum criteria for registration on RXIL.
Please go ahead and tell madam, because the question I think he has put it to you directly, I believe. Any minimum criteria
Yes,
for
yes.
registration?
I'll answer that question. So there is no criteria, no minimum criteria for registration. Uh, any vendor can register as long as they qualify as an MSME. So there's a MSME classification which is there. So any investments in plant and machinery which is under 10 crores will qualify you as MSME. So all those vendors can come and register. However, during this economic package announcements and all, the definition of MSME was changed. But it was increased to 20 crores with a combination of 100 crore turnover. But the notification again is still not out on that. So we still, as on date, continue with the 10 crore cap on plant and machinery. So that still continues.
And this trades is applicable to the service sector also?
Yes, yes, sir. Service sector is also included, both manufacturers and service.
Because
Mr.
service
Omprakash ji, I have a question here. Hiral Valia here.
Yeah. Please go ahead.
A question from Mr. Abheek Datta. We are already registered with RXIL, but now as if we want to register as a buyer, so do we have to follow the criteria what you mentioned of 500 crores?
No, so below 500 crores, one can register. No one stops you from registering as a buyer. However, it will then, when we then go on to the next leg of, getting your vendors onboarded and getting your vendors invoice discounted, then it will be the financiers who will then have to agree to take a call on you. So you will have to get a credit rating if that is available. Basis your credit rating, then the financiers would accordingly take a decision as to up to how much they can do. So those factors will then come into play.
Okay, but we can still register as a buyer, right?
You can, yes, most certainly you can register.
Okay.
And Abheek Datta, another thing I wanted to ask you is which is the regulatory authority which is binding RXLI?
So this is the RBI license.
RBI.
So the license, RBI has only issued the license for the platform.
And the buyers and sellers are to give some reportings. How is it?
No, so any reporting goes from our side only.
Okay, so it ends with you.
Yes, yes, everything is through us only.
Okay. So I think it's almost 5. We have completed the sessions. It was a
Yes.
wonderful session, and I would like to thank all the members who have attended and participated in this program. I thank Mr. Maheshwar Rao to having set the context of the event, and Mrs. Rachana Bhusari to have shared about the listing details, the compliance portion, and also it was very encouraging that an MSME can list its shares and dilute its equity by 25%. That's a good chance for them to grow, and also it encourages an ESOP program to their employees. Normally,
Better.
do not get into ESOP. I believe this 25% of share listed will definitely encourage the employees to take up the ESOPs, and retention also happens, especially the service sectors. That's a good attempt. And Abheek Datta was a wonderful presentation. I know the time was a little short for you, and we need a little more time on this. And thanks Hiral and Wilfred to have come all the way and participated in this event. Thank you very much. We will reassemble definitely on this topic once again. Uh, Prithvi, are you there? Rupa?
Yes, sir, please
Yeah,
share.
we are there, Om Prakash.
Yeah, so we would like to conclude this session. You would like to say something on behalf of our...
No, you can just conclude, sir. Not an issue.
Yeah. So we call this a meeting uh, ended, and we'll adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Om Prakash. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.